And neither will I.
I remember bringing cocaine to work, and one day the vial fell out of my pocket onto the floor, and I think Harrington may have seen it. And you know what it was? Just pretend it's not happening. On their part and on mine.
It wasn't ignored. It wasn't ignored. She was fired.
The producers came to me and said, look, we need you to go get well.
And it's the best thing that could possibly happen. So I think that it was handled actually extremely well.
And so, I mean, I didn't know how to go get well. I was 17 years old, you know. So I would go and I would, you know, have my teeth cleaned and my hair cut, and I'd buy a new outfit and get a massage and go to the dermatologist, and I'd come back and say, ta-da, I'm well.
Their lives consumed by drugs, Phillips and her father were desperate for help.
My dad was arrested for trafficking narcotics, and he called me from a rehab in New Jersey. I mean, and literally I was sitting there with a needle hanging out of my arm. It was really bad. And he said, you need help, and I need help. He said, I need help because without your help, I'm going to go to prison. He was facing 45 years. I got on the next plane, and I went into rehab. And this was a very bizarre kind of rehab.
Mackenzie would be the first to tell you that whole New Jersey rehab was a farce.
They said that if alcohol wasn't your primary drug of choice, you could continue to drink. During that time, we negotiated a return to 1 day at a time.
When she came back in that 9th season, they told her that here's the deal, just like athletes. At any time we can give you a blood test or urine test. She agreed to it, and she came back.
I had put on a lot of weight because I wasn't doing cocaine anymore, and I didn't know how to take care of my body in a healthful manner.
Nobody wanted her to be hurt.
I felt horribly ugly, and I hated myself on a daily basis, and I wasn't getting high, but I was drinking.
It was a tough time, mostly for her.
And because I didn't have real abstinence, and I was continuing to drink, I was back on cocaine within a year, maybe within 6 months. And the weight went off, and I was back down to 99 pounds, and they were patting my clothes, and my skin was exploding. I mean, they couldn't even get a close-up of me because I looked like the moon, you know. It was just horrible. And I was asleep on the couch during rehearsal.
And I went up to her on the couch, and I shook her, and I woke her up, and I said, Mac, it's Patricia, and she was very groggy. And I said, I have to ask you for a urine test.
And I remember saying to her, Patricia, if you wait until tomorrow, it'll be fine. Because I knew how long it took for drugs to go out of your system.
I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
And I said, well then, don't even bother. And I got up, and I got my stuff. And I remember as I was walking to my car, I saw the rest of the cast coming from the executive producers' offices, all of them together walking, and I knew that they'd been in a meeting about me, and everyone had left the rehearsal hall so that Patricia could wake me up.
I dissolved into tears that day. We sat around the table, all of us, and we were really concerned with her getting through the night.
And I didn't even wave, I didn't even look their way. I put my stuff in the car.
There was anger, and there was frustration, and there was great sadness, and I thought she could be dead soon.
And I didn't see any of them for many years. And that was the end of my 1 day at a time.
When Phillips left the show, she was making a small fortune. But for another actor, the money wasn't nearly enough.
Well, I wanted more money. And they said, no, you're not worth it. I said, oh, yeah. And they said, you're not. I said, oh, yeah? Watch what I'm going to do. So I got big law firm. They said, well, don't go back to work. So I stayed off work for a month. And they did the 4 worst shows they ever did. And they wanted me back.
Harrington was holding out for the same deal as Bonnie Franklin, who reportedly was getting $40,000 per episode plus residuals. The veteran actor settled for about $15,000 per episode. 1 Day at a Time went on for 9 seasons, and the network was ready to commit for 2 more, but Bonnie Franklin decided to call it quits.
She had, for 9 years, she had been central to the story and the solution. And now she was making coffee and talking to others who were central to the story and the solution. And she just didn't want to do that for another 2 years. You can't find any fault with that.
The show had gotten tired. The writers were not coming up with anything anymore. We had a new director our last year. Mackenzie wasn't in good shape. And so it was all just not good.
Well, I was really ticked off at Barney because they offered me more money than I knew existed for another 2 years, right?
Pat, I apologize, but I don't apologize.
I had such plans for that cash.
With One Day at a Time canceled, Mackenzie Phillips left her TV family for her real family, touring with her father in the Mamas and the Papas. It would take another 10 years before she found a reason to turn her life around.
Listen, I left One Day at a Time in 1982 or 83, and I didn't get sober until 1992. So my life for those years, I can't even explain it. I was on the road with my father and the Mamas and the Papas for almost 10 years. We were traveling an average of 200 days a year. And I had a son who I put at great risk while I was pregnant. He was born without any complications. The child is a miracle. It's a gift from God. And then one day in 1992, my son was almost 5. And I woke up and I just knew that I was going to die if I didn't do something. And that didn't used to matter. If I was going to die, that would have been fine. But this day it mattered. It finally mattered. And I picked up the phone, and I was in detox by sundown. And I was in detox for 2 weeks, and then I went to a place for the reluctant to recover.
When she turned the corner, it was breathtaking. It was just breathtaking.
Mackenzie got well when she decided to have a life with her son. She realized, I am costing myself the greatest gift I have ever gotten. What am I doing?
My sobriety date is January 27th, 1992. So just very recently I've celebrated my 8th sober year. And I gotta tell you that my life has never been better.
But there was still one last step to take.
I would call Valerie probably every 6 months during the first 6 years of my sobriety and say, "Hi Val, it's Mac. Just want to let you know I love you. I'm thinking of you. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I want you to know I've got 2 years and 6 months. And if you ever want to call me, here's my number." 6 months later, I'd say, "Hi Val, it's Mac. I've got 3 years. Hi Val, it's Mac. I've got 3.5 years." Never once called back, but that was okay with me. That was so okay with me. Eventually, 6 years later, I mean, I'm like an old bulldog, I don't let go of something. And she called. We took a long, long walk in the mountains. And suffice to say, we held hands, we cried, we hugged, we healed.